In this video, we're going to look at how to make a double FK spine. It's double FK because it has one for the lower spine and one for the upper spine. Here's my upper spine FK control. It's not bound yet, but you can see the upper spine flexing and then the lower spine. So we can get some nice booty shaking going on. Dancing will happen. And neck and head all FK connections through the node editor. So let's look at how to make that. I'm going to create a locator, create locator, and slide it up to where I want the center of gravity to be. Since he's a guy, I want him to have a lower center of gravity. A higher center of gravity gives flow to the hips, more of a sachet in the walk. It is associated with a more feminine walk. So a lower center of gravity means more of that shoulder side to side that gives you more of a lumbering male walk or male identified walk. So I'll put the center of gravity here a couple inches below the belly button, kind of at the belt line. And check it in the side view. I want the spine to go straight up from the root, and it can almost do that, and then straight down to the ankle, which it's actually closer to. And I want it to be in the center of the body. All of those wants are always in conflict, so there's always a little bit of split the difference. But I kind of like it where it is right now, so I will leave it. I'm going to duplicate the locator and move it up past that first edge loop to the second. Duplicate it again skipping an edge loop to the next. And then one more ending in the clavicle. And that's going to be my upper spine joint chain. So I'm going to hide the mesh. And there's all my locators. And I'm going to end up making 3 joint chains total. One for the root, and that's just going to be a single joint. And then I'm going to make one for the upper spine. And then one for the lower spine. I haven't placed those locators yet, but I'm going to start doing the joint. I'm going to start doing the upper spine. Actually, I'll continue on up from the clavicle. Bring back my mesh. Go to the front view. And let's say I want that a little lower, right there on the clavicle. And that one, I'm going to move back here. Keep that low. Right at the base of the clavicle. To line it up for the neck. And then, let's see, the center of movement for the neck is sort of right here at the base of the jaw. And that's where I want this to be, just below. So maybe about there. Duplicate it. Once for the neck. Duplicate it again for the head. Ooh, that's my head rotation. I need that a little bit forward. So maybe let's grab these 3 and there, that's a little better. And then grab that last one, duplicate it one more time, and that's going to be for just a visual helper. The head nub joint that I don't include in the bind being the relationship between the joints and the skeleton. I want my joints to have world orientation. I can either create each joint separately, and then it's guaranteed to have world orientation where the x-axis of the joint is aligned to the x-axis of the world. And I'll name this first one root underscore bind joint, and I will copy, well, let's spell it correctly first, and I will copy bind joint so I can paste it. Okay. And bind joints are all the ones that are actually going to influence the mesh. They're not helper joints or rotational, visual joints, anything. These are the ones that actually control the mesh. And so there's the root joint, just the first of my joint chains. The next one, well, first I'll hide that. And then the next joint chain, I'm just going to hold down V to point snap with my joint tool active and just snap my way up the chain. V to snap, and there's the last one. Okay, right now all of these joints have their x-axis pointing to their child joint. We need these to have world orientation in order to match the controls. So I'm going to go to Skeleton, Orient Joint Options box, Orient Joint to World, and I hit Orient, and suddenly, yep, Z is pointing in Z, X and X, and Y and Y. So now that whole chain is nicely oriented to the world. Awesome. Name each one. First one is upper spine 1, and this one's just a joint. It is not a bind joint. Since upper spine 1 and lower spine 1 are all in the exact same place, I don't want 3 different joints fighting for control of the mesh. So this way I know only the root will be in the bind, and the upper spine 1 and lower spine 1 joints will not be in the bind. Okay, next one. Upper spine 2, bind joint. Upper spine 3, bind joint. So I've got 2 joints in the neck here. So neck 1, bind, paste, bind joint. Neck 2, bind joint. Head, bind joint. And head nub joint. It is not a bind joint. All of the skull is going to be weighted onto the head bind joint, and this is just really a helper joint that gives me this as a visual to let me know, yes, the head is actually turning. Okay, so that's my upper spine. Let's make the lower spine. I select upper spine 1, Control H to hide, grab my joint tool. Oop, let's make the joints first, or the locators. Let's see, I'll just slide this down, and one more, check it with a mesh. Yeah, right there with that edge loop. Perfect. Oops, I did not duplicate. So undo, move that back. There we go. Duplicate it, because I need that as my root. Show the mesh, find the edge loop, line it up right on that edge loop. Nice. There we go. And snap the joints. 1 and 2. Boom. And I'll name those lower spine 1 underscore joint. And I'll use the down arrow to go to the next one in hierarchy. And this is lower spine 2, paste bind joint. Select tool. And I'll put these in hierarchy. So parenting, I'm going to grab my pelvis and parent it to the lower spine 2. Then I'm going to unhide my other 2 joints, Shift H to unhide, and I'm going to select lower spine 1 and upper spine 1, and then the root, P to parent, so the children choose the parent, and the root is now the parent of them all. Cool. Now we're going to need some controls. So I'll start with the center of gravity, then the lower spine control, upper spine control, neck control, and head control. And then once the controls are built, we can connect them. So to make controls, create NURBS primitive circle, R to scale, scale it up, and V to snap, W to move, V to snap, snap it to the root. And we'll name it COG for center of gravity underscore control. And I'll copy control. Now just leave it. Okay. We've got it named, we've got it placed, and the rule for all controls is name it, place it, freeze it. You have to be able to have zeros in all of the attributes or all of the transformation attributes so you can zero out your control. So modify, freeze transformations. Name it, place it, freeze it. Okay. There's the top of the hierarchy for controls. Control D to duplicate. Scoot it back. Rotate it 90. 90 and X. Scale it down. Check it with my mesh. Yeah, it's too far back to be that useful. So about there feels good usually. And shrink it down even more. This is lower spine, so I want it to be kind of lined up with the joints and the hips that it controls. And name that lower spine. Get rid of the 1. There we go. Duplicate it. Move it up. Scale it up. Name it upper spine. And get rid of the 1 at the end of control. Duplicate it. Scale it down really small for the neck control. Name it. Whoops, lost my selection. Neck. Get rid of the 1. Duplicate it one last time. Move it up. Scale it up. And I might do something, just give it a little bit of a different shape. Oval shaped, a little more like a head maybe. There we go. Name that head control. Get rid of the 1. Okay. And select them all. Modify freeze transforms. So now they're all zeroed out. And I'll put them in hierarchy. I'll put them in hierarchy. The parent is a child of the neck, P to parent. Then I select the neck, and it chooses its parent, the upper spine control. I hit P to parent, and the upper spine control is a child of the center of gravity. So P to parent, then I select my lower spine, and child chooses the parent, so I select center of gravity, P to parent. There we go. Those are all in hierarchy. Let's start connecting. I'm going to start with connecting the center of gravity, and I want that to control the root joint. So we're going to use a constraint. We're going to use a parent constraint. With constraints, it's a controller and controlled relationship. So selection order is the controller chooses the controlled. So control first, then the object it controls. And I go to constrain, parent, and I tend to leave on maintain offset unless I really am needing it otherwise. So now the center of gravity has the root constrained to it, and when I move it around, yeah, it's starting to go. So I'll select my lower spine, and where'd my root go? There it is. Open up my lower spine, and I'll select both of those joints. And I'm going to go to my node editor to connect my lower spine to my joints, and I'll connect the rotation, so when I rotate the lower spine control, these joints will rotate. And I say Window, Node Editor. Okay, so there's my control. And I'll double click on these little triple thingies. And that gives me my rotate, input on one side, output on the other. And I want to take the lower spine control, rotate output to the rotate input of lower spine 1, and then do that again, output to input of lower spine 2. And now, when I select that, something is, I did not orient those joints. So here's what happens when you don't have joints oriented properly. I rotate it in Z. Okay, that seems to be working. X is kind of not. That's really weird. And Y is also giving me X. So yeah, totally broken. So let's delete those connections. And I'm going to select, I'm going to unparent my pelvis, fix what I forgot. Grab my lower spine, and I'm going to orient it just like I did the upper spine. So skeleton, orient joint options box, orient joint to world, hit orient, and now, yep, it's got world orientations, both of them. Okay, so let's do reparent those. Pelvis chooses its child, not the locator. Getting annoying to hold, so I'll control click the lower spine. I want lower spine 2, don't I? There we go. P to parent. Okay, so now that's in hierarchy, and I'll redo my rotations. Rotate to rotate, output rotate to input rotate, and test it again. Yeah, okay. There we go, side to side. And for the contrapposto, rotating in Y. Sweet. So I'll clear this out with this little button right here. It's got little stars on it. I hit it, and it should clear my graph editor, or my node editor. I don't know why that's not going away. Fine. And I'm going to load my upper spine control, and then I'm going to shift click over here in the outliner on the plus sign next to upper spine 1, and that opens them all up. And I'm going to grab all 3 of my spine joints, load them in. Upper spine control. Open these up with a double click to make it easy. And I grab output rotate to input rotate. And since I did already orient these joints, this should be fine. Of course, we'll test it. Come on. Rotate to rotate. There we go. So that should be the 3 spine joints. There we go, giving me a nice looking curvature to the spine. And then I'll clear out and select my neck control and the 2 neck joints and add them in. I don't know why that keeps insisting on showing up. Neck control shape, double click, double click, double click, and whoops, I grabbed the shape, not the control. Oh, was that the control and I just wasn't looking? No, where's my actual control, not the shape? I need the transform. So I'll grab neck again and add it. Really? Okay, so maybe I close everything, select my 2 joints, grab my neck, and add them. What did that give me? There's probably my control. I don't want the control shape or the lower spine. This is the control I want. And there's my 2 necks. Open it up with a double click, rotate to rotate, output to input, and now my neck should control those two joints. Sweetness. Okay, and now I'm going to clear again, select my head joint and my head control, add them in, head bind joint and head control. There we go, these two, double click, and rotate to rotate. There we go. And so now I have a center of gravity that moves the whole upper spine with it and interacts with the legs. I can rotate that down. I have an upper spine that can twist one way and a hip that can twist the other. And a neck, whoop, that was my upper spine, neck that can counter, and a head that can also join the twisty fun. And because I did my freeze transformations, I can select all the controls, channel box, zero them out, and everything goes back to neutral so I can continue rigging.